The Echo in the Forest, the Stephen Goldsmith mystery. The air on Mount Kutha is usually filled with the sounds of life, the chatter of hikers, the whir of mountain bikes, the chorus of native birds. But on a brisk day in July 2013, a different, more somber sound echoed through the bushland. The methodical scrape of shovels and the tense silence of a Queensland police forensics team. They were there because of a phone call. An anonymous tip, its origins murky but its coordinates precise, had led them to this secluded patch of earth. What they unearthed was the tragic end to a mystery that had begun nearly 3 decades earlier. The skeletal remains of Stephen Bernard Goldsmith. To understand the end of Steve's story, we have to go back to the beginning. In 1984, Stephen Goldsmith was 25 years old. He was a friendly, well-liked electrician from the Bayside suburb of Wynnum. Those who knew him describe a man who was happy, reliable, and had everything to live for. He was recently engaged to his fiancée, Colleen, and was excitedly planning their future together. There was no indication of trouble, no dark secret threatening to surface. That's why his disappearance on October 21st, 1984, was so utterly baffling. After finishing a shift working on the Story Bridge, Steve told his workmates he was heading into the city. He was last seen alive at the nearby Transcontinental Hotel, and then he simply vanished. He didn't show up for work the next day. He didn't call his fiancée. He didn't touch his bank accounts. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. For his family, especially his mother Jean and his fiancée Colleen, it was the start of a torturous 29-year limbo. The case grew cold, but their hope never fully extinguished. Every phone call could be news. Every unidentified body found somewhere in Australia had to be checked. They plastered his face on missing persons posters, pleading for answers that never came. The not knowing was a unique kind of agony. Back on the mountain in 2013, the forensic examination began. This was no longer a missing persons case. It was a homicide investigation. The remains were Steve's, identified through dental records, but the how and the why were still buried deep. The scene revealed grim clues, a shallow grave and, critically, a .22 caliber bullet. Stephen Goldsmith had been shot. This discovery ripped the case wide open. Steve wasn't a runaway. He hadn't met with a simple accident. He had been murdered and deliberately hidden in a place so remote it had kept his secret for a generation. The anonymous tip now seemed less like a clue and more like a confession, or the act of someone unburdening a terrible secret they could no longer hold. Police launched a massive reinvestigation, Operation Victor Geddes. They re-interviewed old friends, workmates, and associates. They appealed to the public, hoping the decades had loosened lips and weakened loyalties. The theory that emerged was one of a tragic mistake, a case of mistaken identity. The prevailing hypothesis is chilling in its randomness. Detectives believe Steve may have been targeted after work because he was driving a car similar to that of a known criminal who had stolen a large quantity of drugs. In the shadowy, violent underworld of 1980s, Brisbane, retaliation was swift and brutal. The killers, it is believed, saw the car, saw a young man who roughly fit the description, and executed him. When they realized their horrific error, they buried the evidence on the dark slopes of Mount Kutha. The case, however, remains officially unsolved. Despite a $250,000 reward for information and compelling circumstantial evidence, no one has ever been charged with the murder of Stephen Goldsmith. The truth, it seems, is known only to the killer, the anonymous tipster, and the silent ancient mountain that kept watch over Steve's rest for 29 long years. For his family, the discovery brought a painful form of closure. The hoping and the waiting were over. They could finally lay Steve to rest in a proper grave in 2014, with his name on a headstone. But it also replaced one pain with another, the certainty of his violent death and the burning injustice that his killers have never faced justice. The story of Stephen Goldsmith is a haunting reminder that some echoes from the past never truly fade. They wait in the silence of a forest, in a shallow grave, for technology, a guilty conscience, or a stray tip to finally bring them to light and offer a long-awaited voice to the missing.